Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Bree Kirsch, and I'll be the moderator for this session. Before we begin, we do have a few reminders that you've probably heard several times now if you've been attending the conference. We do have a code of conduct that we will adhere to for this conference, and I'm going to post the link in the chat now. So please let us know by emailing us at genaiandlibraries@gmail.com with any concerns you may have. Make sure your microphone is muted, please. And then during Q&A, please wait till you're invited to unmute, or you can ask questions in the chat or the Q&A feature within Zoom. You can also use chat to discuss things during the presentations as well. The session is being recorded, and you can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. So I'll briefly introduce our presenters for these three lightning sessions, including Christina Boyle from College of Staten Island, Matthew Frankel and Sam Putnam from New York University, and Shaza Bejun, Thiloni Samarakon, and Daniela Solomon from Case Western Reserve University and University of Miami. Please join me in welcoming our presenters. So Christina, if you want to unmute and start your presentation, you are welcome to do so.
Okay, thank you so much. Now I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about my experiences using ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot as tools for information literacy in my information literacy course that I teach at the College of Staten Island. So here is just a very brief outline of the whirlwinds of generative AI that it's hard to believe it's been less than 2 years since ChatGPT first came out. So it has become ubiquitous so rapidly. This is really just to show how quickly it has kind of joined the stage. And it's been my job to immediately try to focus on how we can use these tools, how we incorporate them into our teaching. So when ChatGPT specifically was first released, there was lots of chat from folks in all stakeholders in higher education. Some felt and still feel that it kind of has no place in education and how we should prohibit it. It leads to plagiarism. And then some that students will already be using it. There's lots of opportunities. And I think that both of these views have a place. And I think that my role as a librarian is really to ensure that students are ready to kind of take whatever technology is coming their way, evaluate how it falls into their own information seeking, if it's going to be something that they'll be using throughout their lives, if it can contribute to their time as lifelong learners, and then how it might be expected that they are familiar with it in the future. So for me, when something new and revolutionary comes out, I like to revisit the ACRL framework for information literacy for higher education. This is a way to kind of guide the goals and objectives of my teaching as new things continue to come out. So for me, the 3 bullet points that I focused on are that information has value, research as inquiry, and searching as strategic exploration. So for information has value, the 2 points that I kind of zeroed in on are giving credit to the original ideas of others and making informed choices in regards to data privacy. So my view is if students are using AI, we want them to be transparent about it so that we can then sort of guide them on how this may be appropriate, how it may not be appropriate, based on how they're using this. I'm sort of reminded of students who, when Wikipedia first kind of came onto the scene and blew up, was so many students were using Wikipedia. They were being told not to use Wikipedia. but they would use it and then cite the sources that Wikipedia had as references so that they wouldn't show us they were using Wikipedia. And I think one thing we need to do is kind of get ahead of new things that are emerging and really teach them to be more transparent and understanding. If they're using AI, how are they citing it? How do they know where the information is coming from? How does plagiarism come into play? And you're really using it as a teachable moment. Privacy and data are, a different behemoth, but it's something to at least touch upon and have students think when they're seeking information or they're using generative AI to find some type of information, what information is then being taken from them at the same time? How does that train the AI? Where is it going, et cetera? For research as inquiry, formulating questions for research, this is the one that I focus the most on, and then using various research methods. So for me, I really use generative AI in my classroom to show students that it can be a supplemental tool, specifically when picking a topic for research, forming a research question, and then trying to navigate searching for that information. How can generative AI help them with this process? How can it help them to be precise in developing keywords, in developing research questions, et cetera? And then searching as a strategic exploration, matching information needs and search strategies, using different types of searching language. So how are using controlled vocabulary, how are finding keywords, how is this the same type of transferable skill as creating prompts for AI? Where do they intersect and overlap? So again, just viewing it as a tool, the same way we might view a library tutorial as a tool. So this framework and these particular points really helps me to kind of guide and point my students towards how to use it ethically. So a little very quick background on the class that I teach. It is, in addition to the standard librarian one-shots, I teach a course called, it's LIB 102 at the College of Staten Island, called Beyond Google Research for College Success. Now, this course was created before generative AI became a thing, and it was really designed to be kind of an extension of that one-shot, teaching students, generally really designed for freshmen, beyond just that one, that one session, how to use the library for research, how to use that moving forward through their college careers. So one thing that happens as the course evolves, we see that a lot of students who enroll are actually seniors. They're getting ready to graduate. They're using it. It's a one-credit course, so they're using it as kind of a one credit to fill their schedule, get them to graduation. Or they might be juniors and they're kind of, again, looking towards finishing out their college career. So I've really pivoted my focus to instead look for tools for research that help with college needs, and then also for things that might be used more beyond, right? So since AI is so ubiquitous, how can we look at that as a tool that they'll be using both for, as they may be ending their college career, and how it will help them in the future? So I've taught the course for many years, but since the release of ChatGPT, I have taught 3 sections of the course, so 3 iterations. And I kind of informally polled students with their experiences with AI. And my classes were rather small. I had about 10 students or so, but in each class. But each time, every single student raised their hand when I asked who had used ChatGPT or who had used generative AI. None of them really seemed to have explored other forms of generative AI. Gemini and Copilot were not something that was on their radar, but they did use ChatGPT. I polled them using Mentimeter so that they wouldn't feel like they couldn't be honest. The answers were anonymous. I asked how they used it. They gave answers like summaries, helping with citations. Some of them were computer science students. They used it for coding. There was no mention of consulting it for resource sources, which made me feel good as a librarian that they weren't going to it as if it was a search engine. So that was an encouraging start. They all use the free ChatGPT. So we spent some time specifically talking about what generative AI might be used for, how it's not a search engine, how it's not a database, how it's important to understand what each digital tool is, what it's designed for, and what it's capable of. So some of the exercises that I had them do specifically was we first started off with what not to do. What is not a good use of generative AI? And to show why it's not a good use for generative AI, I had them actually go through the motions of using it in a way that would not be appropriate based on, its capacity. So we all together as a class chose a prompt. So one example is that we had in my last class was asking. I broke them up into groups of 3, and each would use a different generative AI, so ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot, and ask the same exact prompt, and they would ask the same prompt twice to observe the differences. So we asked to find scholarly peer-reviewed article, like a number of scholarly peer-reviewed articles on a topic. A topic we came up with recently was social media and body image. It was no surprise that ChatGPT hallucinated some sources. And then we also looked at Gemini and Copilot, which since they're actively using the internet, they didn't hallucinate as much, but they did give answers that were not quite right. So we took a really close look at what made those incorrect and not useful. And that helped to kind of pin down for them why it may not be useful in this way. So it's not reliable as information seeking. We asked where the information's from. All of them gave very nebulous answers, basically saying it's data set, text, and code. And we also spent a lot of time talking about why it's important to know where information comes from and how precision matters. So this was just a screen grab from Google Gemini when we asked. And at first glance, a lot of the information looks like it could be scholarly, but it actually was rather insidious because some of them, it looks more believable than ChatGPT at first glance because it's actually giving us some specific links. But a lot of them, if you actually look into these resources, it's a blog post or a report mentioning a scholarly source. So I use this as a teachable moment for us to look in how generative AI isn't helpful for this because it can actually further confuse students on something that they struggle with a lot, which is really nailing down the specific type of resource that something is. Then we focus on what to do, how to use it. So using generative AI to assist in research question creation was something we spent a lot of time with. Developing research questions can give students trouble. So we had them practice kind of this prompt engineering by being more and more specific. And this in turn can help them become more precise in narrowing down keywords and narrowing down topics for research questions. So this is just a screen grab from Copilot that we used for coming up with a research question. We saw how by just giving a general prompt, like give me a research question, it came up with really kind of vague concepts. And the more precise we were, and the more we gave keywords about a specific research topic, the more precise and useful the research question would be given to us, which then we would revise, right, based on student need. So we're really using it as kind of a prompt to create a research question. So then I actually used Copilot to help me form kind of a general lesson plan because I want to understand as well, if my students are using AI, then how can I use AI in a way that is appropriate for our research? So I wanted to figure out how to demonstrate to my students the parallels between choosing research question and prompt engineering. And it actually gave me a kind of a general lesson plan guide that was useful. So it talked about objective clarity, scope and feasibility, being specific, relevance, originality, and iterative refinement. So I was able to use AI not only as a teaching tool, but also to literally use it as a tool to create a lesson plan to help me organize my thoughts for my students. And I showed them this and was very transparent about it to let them to understand how it does have its place, how we can actually use it as a tool to help us practice with research questions, to practice doing our searches, not appropriate for the searches themselves, but it can help us and support us in that type of searching. So I think this is another way to help encourage our students to think very precisely as they have to within the research process, how it is an iterative process. And I think this is a useful way for us to demonstrate the use of generative AI. So this was just a general overview. This is ongoing. I'm going to continue to use AI as a teaching tool for my students and to point them towards the direction of using it as kind of a support to gather their thoughts in the research process, to use and apply those same types of skills that they need to find narrowing a topic, to find constructing a research question, and the same thing as prompt engineering would be, so that it has uses outside the classroom, but also we can see how it draws parallels to the actual research process while also being part of that process. So that is generally all I have. And now I think we'll go into, okay, perfect. I think I might have time for the questions.
Now we're turning over to Matthew and Sam.
There we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Sam Putnam. I'm director of the Byrne-Dibner Library at New York University, and I'm here with my colleague.
Hi, I'm Matt Frankel, and I'm the engineering librarian at the Dibner Library.
And today we're here to talk about understanding the impacts of generative AI on the information-seeking behavior of engineering students. So a quick overview of our project. The purpose of our studies have been to understand how does ChatGPT impact the information-seeking behavior of engineering students who use ChatGPT, and what implications might that have for lifelong learning and engineering education. Phase one of the project was to explore ChatGPT's capabilities with answering engineering questions and gathering impressions from the community. But we're currently in phase two, where we are doing direct investigation into how students use and what they think about ChatGPT's capabilities.
So just to give you a quick summary of kind of what we found in phase one, we kind of, one element of our phase one study was to survey students and get their impressions. And we got some great responses, including the little figure that's seen here, showing, you know, how they thought it could answer basic questions. It wouldn't be as good at complex or open-ended questions in engineering. And in addition to that survey, we also gave a version of the FE exam for mechanical engineering, the fundamentals of engineering exam that students would take after graduating to like get licensed as mechanical engineers. We gave that to both the 3.5 and 4.0 versions of ChatGPT, and you can kind of see how the 4.0 version performed much better than the 3.5 based on the questions we were able to give it. But moving on to the current phase that we're in, again, the goal here was to try to move forward from doing surveys of students, which, you know, is, I think, with ChatGPT and other generative AIs being so new, has been a technique that a lot of people have started doing, and try to create a research instrument that would allow us to directly observe students using the generative AI to learn how they're using it from them directly. And so the methodology we developed was a pre-survey that we would give students at the start of the session to get some baseline information about their about how they use generative AI, their experience with it, if they use any other tools, things like that. That would be followed up by an observational session where they would use a think out loud protocol, and we would be observing them through that think out loud protocol, where they would use ChatGPT as well as the open internet to answer a complex multi-part engineering question. And then following that session, they would a post survey where we get impressions about, you know, their feelings during the session and the accuracy and trustworthiness of ChatGPT, as well as some other questions in that post survey. So one of the things we wanted to focus on in today's session was this observation session. This was kind of the critical part of this research instrument. And we spent much of the fall of 2023 as a research team trying to develop an appropriate research instrument here and trying to create a meaningful research question. And it was a very iterative process throughout that fall 2023, where we created a number of different versions of potential research questions. But what kind of grounded us in the development of these questions was the 5 points that are listed on this slide, where we were looking at or trying to make sure that our questions allowed us to investigate how students use ChatGPT to gather background information, to directly solve engineering problems like the kinds they might see in a homework assignment, in an ideation or brainstorming process, if possible, for coding or for data finding, and finally, as a tool for writing or drafting text. So we wanted to make sure that we would have a question that allowed us to look at all of those different kinds of behaviors. And what ultimately kind of guided us into the final question that we'll talk about in the next slide is we tied all these things together through the design thinking framework, which is a common framework taught in engineering programs that asks students, when trying to solve a problem or design a solution to a problem, to empathize why there's need for a solution to this problem, to define that problem, to ideate on possible solutions, to then prototype those solutions, and then ultimately test them out. And so using the combination of the design thinking and those prompts that we wanted to study, we developed this overall prompt that students would imagine they were taking a elective course in engineering and climate change. This was grounded in kind of the UN's big goals for engineering, and we would have them have an assignment where they were to draft a letter to their New York City representative, their council person, advocating for renewable energy projects in New York City, and that this letter needed to talk about solar energy as well as another energy source that they could determine. And we asked them to always start each subpart of this question in ChatGPT before they moved on to using any other resources they might find helpful in answering the sub-questions. And so here we can see the 7 different sub-questions that the students would have to answer as part of this observational session. And we've also tried to outline how they link back to this design thinking and the goals that we had. So first, we wanted them to define a number of terms related to this project. Some terms we thought they would already be aware of, like renewable energy and power, and others that we thought would be more likely to be new to them, like a damage function or a heat island, that were more technical if they weren't in this specific research area. We then asked them to find direct impacts of climate change on New York City since 2010, and to, if possible, determine the cost associated with those, which relates back to this empathy and, again, finding background information. Then we wanted them to do a direct calculation by finding the amount of energy that you could generate in New York City using solar panels. We wanted them to locate 3 academic articles and specifically to cite those articles in IEEE format. We decided ultimately that a coding problem was too difficult to integrate here, so we stuck with a data finding problem and asked them to find direct population data for New York City at various times in the past, as well as to forecast it for the future. We asked them then to explore possible solar energy, possible non-solar energy renewable resources that would make sense for New York City, which was kind of this, again, ideation element. And then finally, they were to generate a letter that they could, in theory, send to their council person that would advocate for solar energy and some other renewable energy source that they could decide from the previous parts of this problem.
So we're currently in the phase of sort of analyzing our data as well as continuing to gather data. But we want to give you some preliminary results of things that we found already. So in the spring of 2024, we had 8 students participate in our research study. 2 of those students are undergraduate students. The other 6 are master's students. 7 of those students are computer science and engineering students, with only 1 being civil engineering. And one qualifier for everyone who was a part of this study, they had to say that they were ChatGPT users or generative AI users. And so all these students said that they were using generative AI daily or almost every day, and that their usage was steady and increasing over the last month. In our post survey, which was after the observational session, we asked them a number of questions. Some really interesting results that we've seen so far is one that students consider ChatGPT to be very helpful. It has an average of 4.3 out of 5, but they don't necessarily consider it to be very accurate. It is, a 3.5 out of 5. So you can see that, students are potentially navigating that trade-off of helpfulness and accuracy as they're completing the project. 6 of the 8 students who completed the observation felt that the grade that they would have received on the letter would have been an A- or better. So there's this confidence in the work that they're producing with ChatGPT. The majority stated that ChatGPT would have saved them hours or days to complete their work. So again, the helpfulness and time-saving benefits of ChatGPT is really apparent for our students. And then when we compare to other resources, such as Google Scholar, Wikipedia, library databases, textbooks, news sources, and their professor, the majority of students rated ChatGPT as less trustworthy than these resources. And I think some of those are maybe obvious, less trustworthy than a professor, but Wikipedia is maybe a little bit of a surprising one, considering the uncontrolled authorship component of Wikipedia and some of the things that were mentioned earlier by the previous speaker about just Wikipedia's general our perceptions of Wikipedia's reliableness. A little bit about the observation session, since this is really to me, the most exciting part of this study. Each observational session produces an audio recording as well as screen captures. So we record the screens that they're working on, and we also generate a log of the participants' interactions with ChatGPT. We're in the process of transcribing them using Otter AI, so one AI tool to study another, I suppose. And we're currently in the process of kind of checking our transcripts, making sure that everything is right, and developing a code book so that we can ultimately analyze it in a really thorough way. We are also still actively recruiting students. We would like to get some more undergraduate students and hopefully a few PhD students. And then we'd also like to see students outside of computer science and engineering. And we're in the process of recruiting them. Hopefully we'll get some more this summer. Lastly, though, we just want to share some of the sort of preliminary things that we've seen. So we sort of split this into what they did and what they said. I think what they did, there are some things that you'll probably say that is really common. There's a lot of prompt engineering happening as they're using ChatGPT, right? They're prompting, they are re-prompting, they are reinforcing the responses that they like and think are acceptable for the process. Almost all students are engaging in this throughout the observation session. No students, though, double checked the math for the math questions. So they would ask it sort of this complex problem or give it a formula. ChatGPT would spit out its results, and none of the students actually checked the math. However, students do engage in fact checking often, making sure that articles are real or that wondering if events actually happened. We have a lot of international students who are participating in this study, and they were unaware of Hurricane Sandy, which is a very, impactful event that occurred in New York City and the surrounding area's history. And so a lot of students were just like, were surprised that a hurricane hit New York, so they would kind of check that. So surprise seems to be something that will prompt them to verify a resource. Students recognize the limitations of 3.5 and accessing current information and opted to use other generative AI tools. So several students mentioned that Gemini or Copilot has more recent information, where ChatGPT 3.5 was sort of fixed at a point in time. Despite the majority of students studying computer science and engineering, none of them were confident with the IEEE citation format and didn't made a lot of errors in creating their citations, which probably isn't surprising to a lot of folks here. And then, to decide, one of my favorite things about qualitative research is we can see trends, but we can also see individuals doing things that we think are surprising. And one student, to decide if a journal fit the scope of the assignment, copied and pasted the abstract of that journal article into ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT if it matched the scope. And I thought that was just an incredibly interesting behavior for them. And the other thing is, what do they say, right? We're really interested in the personification of ChatGPT, referring to ChatGPT as being smart and knowing things, sort of like human adjectives and verbs being described to ChatGPT. Gendering ChatGPT occurs often, and there's a lot of please and thank you happening with ChatGPT. The other thing that they say a lot are things like, this is good enough, or it looks convincing, or
1
that
minute
ChatGPT,
warning.
thank you, that ChatGPT will give it a close answer, but not a precise answer. So we call this satisficing in the decision-making biz. Sometimes I think ChatGPT is making me dumber. Was a very amusing observation. And then thank God for ChatGPT. The divine nature of ChatGPT is always a good thing to discuss. And then one of the last ones I wanted to bring up was just this idea that I found a couple times that the link expired. So these things that we sort of know are hallucinations in terms of journal articles. Not all students recognize them as hallucinations. Some of them just think it's a standard broken link error. But that is pretty much it for everything that we have today. Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. And now we'll have time for our last presentation, and we'll see if there's time for questions. If you do have questions, put them in the chat or Q&A, and maybe our presenters can answer them there too.
Okay, so I'll start by sharing our presentation. So our study is about the partial results we got from a study examining AI-related guides from R1 institutions with the aim of determining the best practice for the development of our own AI. So to that end, we investigated 146 R1 institutions websites, and not surprisingly, ChatGPT emerged as the most popular AI tool. The guide analyzed, showcased different levels of AI knowledge, reflecting the varying degrees of expertise among their creators, as well as significant diversity in how the guides address AI literacy issues. So what is AI literacy? We kept talking about information literacy, but we bring up the AI literacy now. And it's a notion introduced in 2016, and it remains a subject of active discussions, particularly concerning the essential skills needed to effectively interact and communicate with AI. For this study, we adopted the 2021 framework developed by Ang et al., who identified the 4 key competencies that are critical for AI literacy: know and understand AI, use and apply AI, evaluate and create with or in AI, and AI ethics. So the first competency is about understanding AI basic functionality and applications. This includes recognizing AI capabilities, limitations, and broader implications. The second competency focuses on usability, highlighting the importance of users being able to leverage AI technology and to complete tasks proficiently and efficiently. The third competency involves the capacity of students to evaluate AI technologies and effectively communicate and collaborate with AI systems. And lastly, and we think the most important one, is the AI ethics, which involve the understanding of morals and ethical implications of AI and empowers users to make well-informed decisions. And I'll leave it to Tilani.
Thank you, Daniela. As part of evaluating the AI guides, we looked at prompt design. So as you know, prompt design is the process of creating prompts that elicit the desired response from a language model. So writing a well-structured prompt is important to ensure accurate and high-quality responses. So our review of research guides revealed that when the importance of prompt design is discussed, most guides provide a definition for prompt design. So I've included a couple of definitions that we came across when extracting data from research guides. The guide from Florida International University defined prompt as a set of instructions used to ask a language model to perform a task. The University of California, Irvine defines the prompt as a topic that guides your writing. So there is some differences when it comes to these definitions. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay. I think you went a slide. Yeah.
Sorry.
There you go. Yeah, I have listed some general suggestions provided in research guides on prompt design. It's important that you offer enough background information to help the model understand the context. You need to provide detailed and clear instructions on writing the prompt. Also remember that creating a good prompt is an iterative process where you refine the prompt to improve its effectiveness. So I've provided an example of a well-written prompt that was provided in one of the research guides that we looked at. Next slide, please. Okay, so another topic we are interested in exploring is biases in AI and how they are addressed in research guides. We identified 4 different categories: algorithmic bias, selection and training bias, racial bias, and misinformation and disinformation. Next slide, please. So algorithmic bias is related to the inherent biases in the design or functioning of the algorithm itself. It's important to have algorithmic transparency during the model development and implementation. Selection bias arises when the sample used to train the model does not represent the broader population. If the AI systems are trained on biased data, this bias can be reflected in the output. For example, if an AI system is trained on a data set of news articles, mostly from one political perspective, it may be more likely to generate text reflecting that perspective. Next slide, please. We also wanted to see if the research guides discussed racial biases. AI systems are often trained on large data sets that may only be representative of some racial groups. The AI model will not perform well for other races if a data set predominantly includes data from one race. For example, training data for a facial recognition algorithm that overrepresent white people may create errors when attempting facial recognition for people of color. So biases in AI is an important area to explore. So we examine research guides to understand the extent to which they address or discuss this topic. So over to Shaza.
So in this section, I will share some best practices regarding the topic of generative AI in research guides. So first, there should be a focus on providing definitions, including generative AI and AI tools. We looked at the length and format of the research guide, along with the substantial efforts to address the ethical concerns of AI use. Next slide, please. So many students have used ChatGPT, as the people before us mentioned, but it's still important for these guides to define terms like generative AI, large language models, LLMs, or even the term ChatGPT. This helps with AI basics, even for students outside the technical or computer science fields. Included here is a screenshot from Vanderbilt University that defines AI chatbots and gives examples. Next slide, please. The design of prompts, as Talani mentioned, is equally important. Included here is a screenshot from the University of South Carolina research guide that defines prompt design as the process of designing inputs for generative AI tools that would produce optional outputs. They even went as far as to include Dr. Leclerc's framework for effective AI prompts. Next slide, please. Length and format were also equally important. Some of the guides were brief and included a few paragraphs at most, while others were extremely lengthy in content prose. In terms of best practices, we recommend 5 to 7 pages. And in terms of organization, whether guides were standalone or part of another guide, we recommend including previews and next buttons at the bottom of each page. Next slide, please. AI bias and ethics are big concerns for librarians, and most of the ones we previewed attempted to articulate and discuss the ethical, legal, private, and bias ramifications of generative AI use. In some cases, all of these were discussed. Other guides rate specific ethical and legal issues by listing news articles, books, blogs, or podcasts, including topics like hallucinations, deepfakes, racial bias, as Delani mentioned, copyright, academic integrity, along with data privacy and security. We recommend listing AI bias and ethics as a best practice. Next slide, please. This screenshot is from a YouTube video that was listed in a research guide by Florida International University. You see here, it includes 3 tabs titled Ethical, Privacy, and Legal, and it lists all the concerns of AI and gives examples of deep fakes. And you see here the Pope wearing a white puffer jacket, along with deep fakes of the police and opera. Next slide, please. While the use of AI requires guardrails, some guides try to showcase the positive side of AI use. We wanted to conclude this section by introducing some text from the New Jersey Institute of Technology that lists some of those positive uses of AI, including creativity in writing, generation of alternative search terms, which will help in research, summarizing complex information, and providing overall support that enhances creativity, understanding, and efficiency. Back to you, Daniela.
Yes, so based on our study, we came to the conclusion that similarly to the guides for AI literacy, for the information literacy guides, library AI guides are critical for fostering AI literacy. Why? Because these guides can offer curated resources, structural learning path, and practical tips for understanding and utilizing AI, as well as cover fundamental concepts, ethical considerations, and real-world applications, making complex subjects accessible to everybody. The guides also are excellent places to introduce all the ethical dimensions of AI and encourages its responsible use. Promoting such awareness can mitigate potential negative outcomes and bolster public trust in AI. We also consider that incorporating various large models enriches AI literacy, but found that including an extensive list of AI tools can be an efficient practice. And last suggestion we have is that the development of comprehensive guides should be a library-wide initiative to provide accessible and consistent resources for everyone, because these guides are as much as for our patrons as much like for librarians. Thus, thank you for your attention, and we'll be happy to present any questions.
Well, thank you, everyone. That was a whirlwind of quick presentations. I know it's hard to fit everything in these lightning sessions, and I appreciate our first 2 presentations responding to questions in the Q&A and chat already. So if there are any additional questions, we have time for maybe 1 or 2 for our final presentation. Otherwise, I do want to thank our presenters. They did an excellent job and shared a lot of great information with all of us. So please help me thank our presenters. I already see a bunch of thank yous in the chat, but if there is 1 or 2 questions, we do have 2 minutes left. So I'll give you just a little time in case you have questions. Okay, I do see a question that came in the Q&A. For the LibGuides, how frequently did you check for edits or changes as AI tools continued to develop?
Yeah, that was a big part of our process. We started in October last year. And at some point we decided by the end of February, we'll stop. And whatever is there, it's there. That's what we are going to look at. And that's what we did.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? All right, well, I'm not seeing any additional questions. So again, thank you so much to our presenters, and thank you attendees for participating and hearing the information. So there's one final session for the day next, and we hope to see you there before the closing remarks. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.